Dreams are supposed to be harmless. Strange little stories your brain makes up while you sleep. But what if those dreams weren't just dreams? What if they were warnings? Or glimpses into something real? Tonight, we're diving into 3 terrifying true stories where nightmares didn't stay in your head, they crawled into reality. Turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. These are 3 true scary stories where dreams read into reality. I grew up in a small town in northern Michigan, in a modest 2-story house that my parents had owned since before I was born. It was the kind of place that people described as cozy, but to me, it always felt a little too quiet at night. Our backyard sloped down into a patch of woods, and beyond that, a dirt road that barely saw any traffic. The first time I had the dream, I was about 8 years old. At least, I think it was a dream. It's hard to explain because it felt different than normal dreams. I was in my bedroom lying on my bed, but I wasn't me. I was floating above myself like a balloon tethered by an invisible string, watching everything from the ceiling. It wasn't exactly scary at first. I remember looking at the details, the faded posters on my wall, the small digital alarm clock on my nightstand. Only it wasn't showing the right time. It was counting backward, the red numbers flickering like a broken sign. Asterisk, asterisk, 1158, 1157, 1156, asterisk, asterisk. That's when I noticed something else. There were crayon drawings on the wall near my bed. Bright, childish scribbles of stick figures and houses, only I didn't draw those. My parents would have killed me if I had. I was trying to make sense of all this when I heard it, a faint scratching sound like fingernails on glass. My attention snapped to the window across the room. The curtains were slightly open and pressed against the glass. It was a man's face. He had gray hair slicked back like someone who cared about their appearance, and a deep scar running diagonally across his forehead. His eyes were wide and wild, and his teeth... God, his teeth were bared in this awful grin as he clawed at the glass with long, thin fingers. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. Couldn't do anything, and then, just like that, I woke up. For weeks after, the dream repeated, almost exactly the same. Floating above myself, the clock ticking backward, the crayon drawings that weren't mine, and then the man, always at the window, always clawing, always grinning. I finally told my mom about it, thinking she'd brush it off as a silly nightmare, but instead she went quiet, really quiet. After a long pause, she said, "That's strange?" I pressed her for answers, and eventually she told me something that has stuck with me ever since. Before I was born, my parents had a close friend named Brian. He used to come over all the time, dinners, barbecues, you name it. But then something happened. They had a falling out, and he just stopped coming around. My mom wouldn't go into details, but she did tell me one thing. Brian had gray hair, even when he was young, and he had a scar on his forehead. After that, the dream stopped. For almost 2 years, I didn't see the man again. I almost convinced myself it was all just a weird phase of nightmares. But then, when I was around 10, the dreams came back. Only this time, there was one detail that made it so much worse. When I floated above myself, looking down at my sleeping body, the window wasn't closed anymore. It was wide open. The first time I saw that, I jolted awake instantly, drenched in sweat. I ran to the window. It was shut tight, locked even. But something about that dream, it rattled me in a way I can't explain. A few nights later, it happened again. Only this time, when I woke up, I couldn't move. I was trapped, paralyzed, my eyes wide open as I stared at my ceiling. And then I heard it scratching, not from a dream, from the real window. Slow, deliberate scratches against the glass. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I don't know how long it lasted, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 3 minutes. Eventually it stopped. When I could move again, I leapt out of bed, yanked the curtains open, nothing. Just the dark backyard and the line of trees swaying in the wind. That was the last time it happened. The dream stopped completely after that night, but to this day I still think about it. I still wonder, was Brian really gone? Or was someone out there watching me, smiling through the glass? When I was 16, I spent most weekends at my friend Duncan's house. His place was a kind of sanctuary for us, a two-story home tucked at the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. That Friday night started like any other. We stocked up on junk food, played some games, and eventually decided to crash in the living room. It was late, close to 2 when I finally drifted off on the couch, the faint glow of the muted TV flickering across the walls. The dream started so abruptly that I didn't even realize I was dreaming at first. I was standing on a sailboat in the middle of an endless black ocean. The air was still, the sky empty, and the only sound was the water lapping softly against the hull. At first, it was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then the boat lurched hard to the left, nearly throwing me overboard. I grabbed the mast, heart pounding as the deck tilted beneath my feet. The water started rushing and fast, filling the bottom of the boat until it was ankle deep, then knee deep. My mind was screaming at me to do something, but I couldn't move. I remember looking over the edge, expecting to see open water, but instead there was a face. Pale, bloated, just under the surface, staring up at me with eyes so wide they looked ready to burst, and then another face, and another. Dozens of them, pressing against the hull like they were trying to push through the wood. That's when the boat split in two. I fell into the freezing black water, thrashing as those pale hands reached for me from below. And then, just like that, I woke up. At first, I didn't know what pulled me out of the dream. My heart was racing, but there was something else, a sound. It wasn't part of the dream. It was coming from upstairs. It was faint at first, almost like running water. I sat up, blinking in the dim light of the TV, and listened. Yeah, definitely water. The sound grew louder, like a faucet left on full blast. I figured Duncan had gotten up to use the bathroom, so I called out, "Yo, you awake?" No answer. I nudged him with my foot. He was still on the floor, dead asleep. That's when something clicked in my head. The water sound wasn't coming from the upstairs bathroom. It was coming from the guest bathroom, which was further down the hall. Now, let me just say, at 16, I wasn't exactly fearless, but curiosity gets the better of you sometimes. So I grabbed my phone, flicked on the flashlight, and crept upstairs. The sound was deafening now, like a fire hydrant blasting water. I pushed open the bathroom door and froze. The sink faucet was on full blast. Water was overflowing, pouring across the floor in a steady stream, soaking the hallway carpet. Here's the thing that freaked me out. I was at that sink earlier, brushing my teeth before bed. I know I turned it off. I shut the faucet and grabbed some towels to mop up the water. That's when I heard something that sent a chill straight down my spine. The faint sound of a door creaking open at the far end of the hall. I spun around, shining my light down the dark corridor, but there was nothing there. Just the guest room door, slightly ajar. I told myself it was probably just the house settling. Old doors creak, right? I was about to head back downstairs when I noticed something on the carpet near the guest room door. Wet footprints, bare feet. Leading out of the room, I froze. My brain was screaming at me to get out, but my body was locked in place. That's when Duncan's voice cut through the silence behind me. "What are you doing?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. I spun around. He was halfway up the stairs, rubbing his eyes. I explained what I saw: the faucet, the water, the footprints, and to his credit, he didn't laugh. He just frowned and said, "My parents aren't home tonight." Something in his tone told me he was starting to feel the same unease I was. We decided to check the guest room together. I pushed the door open slowly, my heart hammering in my ears. The room was empty, bed neatly made, everything in its place. But then we heard it from behind the door. A long, slow exhale. Before we could react, the door slammed against the wall, and a man burst out of the closet, swinging a piece of PVC pipe. I barely ducked as it whistled past my head. Duncan yelled, grabbing the guy's arm as the pipe clanged to the floor. Everything turned into chaos, shouts, grunts, the sound of things breaking as we fought to hold him down. He was strong, way stronger than either of us. At one point, he broke free and bolted down the stairs. We chased him, but by the time we reached the front door, he was gone. We called the cops immediately. They showed up within minutes, searched the area, but he'd vanished without a trace. The only thing they found was the wet footprints leading out the back door and into the yard. The officer told us we were lucky. Whoever that guy was, he wasn't just some drunk neighbor, he was carrying zip ties in his pocket. I barely slept that night. And even now, I can't shake the feeling that my dream, the boat sinking, those faces under the water, wasn't random. It was like my brain knew something bad was coming, something trying to pull me under. When I was in college, I dated a girl named Bonnie. We'd been together for a few months when she invited me to stay the weekend at her place. Her parents were out of town, and she had the house to herself. Now, I know how that sounds. But honestly, I wasn't expecting anything crazy, I just liked being around her. Her house was nice, a two-story home tucked in a quiet neighborhood with big windows and these old, creaky floors that made every step sound louder than it should. That first night, we stayed up watching movies in her living room until we both passed out on the couch. At some point, I woke up and realized my neck was killing me, so we decided to move to her bedroom upstairs. The room was dark except for this faint strip of light coming from the hallway under the door. I remember thinking that was odd because Bonnie said she'd turned off all the lights, but I didn't want to freak her out, so I didn't mention it. We crawled into bed, and before I knew it, I was out. That's when the dream started. At least I think it was a dream. I was lying in her bed just like before, staring at the ceiling. The room looked exactly the same. Same sheets, same faint glow of light under the door. The only difference was the sound footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps in the hallway. I tried to nudge Bonnie, but my arms wouldn't move. It was like they were glued to the bed. The footsteps got closer, stopping just outside the door. Then came this soft creak of the doorknob turning slow, like whoever was on the other side didn't want to wake us up. The door opened a crack, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. A shadow stretching across the floor, long and thin, moving toward the bed. I wanted to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. I couldn't do anything but lie there and watch as the shadow grew bigger and bigger until it reached the edge of the bed. And then I woke up, heart racing, drenched in sweat. I sat up and looked around. Bonnie was still asleep beside me. Everything looked normal. I told myself it was just a bad dream. But then I noticed the light under the door was still there. Same faint strip glowing across the floor. That's when I heard it again, footsteps. This time they weren't in my head. They were real. I froze, staring at the door as the sound got closer. The same slow, deliberate steps. Then the doorknob turned softly, just like in the dream. The door creaked open a few inches. I could feel my pulse in my throat as I reached over and shook Bonnie awake. She groaned, mumbling something, but before she could sit up, I pressed my hand over her mouth and whispered, "Someone's in the house." Her eyes went wide immediately. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and dialed 911, keeping my voice as low as possible. The operator told me to stay quiet, stay put, and that officers were on the way. Meanwhile, the door was inching open. Whoever was out there wasn't rushing, they were taking their time. That made it so much worse. I looked around for anything I could use as a weapon. The best I could find was a lamp. I yanked the cord from the outlet and gripped it like a bat, praying it would be enough. The door stopped moving, maybe a foot open now, silence, then two whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but I swear I heard one of them laugh. Every second felt like an hour. Bonnie was trembling beside me, clutching my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. Finally, I heard the faint wail of sirens in the distance. Red and blue lights flickered through the cracks in the curtains. That's when everything exploded into motion. The door swung wide and two men in black ski masks bolted down the hall. I didn't even think I lunged after them, but they were gone before I hit the stairs. The cops swarmed the place within minutes. They searched the house and the yard, and guess what they found? A crowbar by the back door and a duffel bag in the bush with duct tape, gloves, and two knives inside. The officers said it was clear what their plan was, and if I hadn't woken up when I did, things could have ended very differently. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. In my dream, I saw one of the shadows raise its hand and put a finger to its lips like it was telling me to stay quiet. When the cops caught the two men a few streets over, I got a good look at their gloves. They had little white patterns on the fingers like bones. Skeleton gloves. That's what I saw in the dream. That little white finger pressed against the lips of a faceless shadow. So yeah, I've always wondered, did my brain somehow know what was coming, or was it something else? Something darker, reaching out through the cracks between dreaming and waking? Dreams are the one place we think we're safe, because when we wake up, everything scary stays behind. But these stories prove something unsettling. Sometimes, the dream doesn't end when you open your eyes. So the next time you wake up from a nightmare and tell yourself it was just a dream, make sure the door's still locked. Thanks for watching, and if you've ever had a dream that felt a little too real, let us know in the comments below. Sweet dreams, if you can.